The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, welcome to the program as we are off and running and a big show on tap. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. A very special guest coming up a little bit later in the program as we will visit with former Tennessee coach Phillip Fulmer, get his thoughts on the Alabama win. He's kind of the Alabama slayer, so to speak, and I think that's what his career is remembered most for, is flipping that series and handling Alabama to the point in which Phillip Fulmer was able to win a national championship. And part of that was because Alabama was somewhat of an afterthought because Phillip Fulmer, his team was so prepared to play them despite the streak leading into that. So we'll visit with Phillip Fulmer a little bit later in the program. Also, we'll have the stat of the day, this day in Tennessee football history. We'll discuss who is now more important to Tennessee's defense. Is it James Pierce or Jermod McCoy? That would have been laughable a couple of months ago. I don't know that it is right now. Why the Vols may want to avoid finishing second or better in the SEC because the SEC championship isn't what it once was. And Alabama faking injuries, comment from their coaches was hysterical. But we will begin the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, with Jimmy Hyams, nice enough to join us each and every Wednesday. And he's looking dapper. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing great. I hope you are as well.
I am. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way because I know this was pressing on your mind. By the way, Caleb, how are you, sir?
Thank you, Dave. I'm doing great.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Dave is not detail oriented the way Billy Napier is.
That's true. That's true. I can't count my losses as much, but I do want, Jimmy, I know this is pressing on your mind. You kept texting me yesterday and you're like, where is this? Where are you with this? So just so you know, bench off 2024, I was able to bench Caleb's body weight 13 times. So I know that it was bugging you, and I'm sorry I couldn't get back. It was a busy day, but John Adams refused to even take part in the fun, but I've got the video to prove it. So I just want to lay that to rest.
That's impressive. I didn't know Caleb was that light.
Yeah, I'm a pretty small guy.
He's $155. That played into the equation. It definitely did.
Got a very petite body, guys.
Very petite body. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this, and it's going to be a part of our poll question. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. It is today's tough question. I'll remind you that Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Varner Ford. I'll tell you more about them here momentarily. Oh, that is the wrong one. Let's go with today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's start with Dylan Samson, who was doing my research on statistics in the SEC. He's averaging right at 120 yards per game. No other running back in the SEC is averaging 100 yards rushing per game. He very well and will most likely eclipse Gene McEver's all-time record for most touchdowns in a season. He is just one away from that, I believe. Rushing. I believe he's just one away from that. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm just curious. I'll open this up. We have some years, some seasons by former Vols that we want to throw at you. You've covered most of these people. I don't think you covered Reggie White in 83. But as far as Dylan Samson's season, how does it compare in your mind to some other legendary Tennessee Vols season? Just 1 year, not the entire career.
And are you talking about running backs or anybody?
I'm talking about anybody. I'm wide open.
Yeah, my first thought was running backs, and my first comparison was the year that Travis Stevens had when he gained over 1,400 yards in 2001. And a lot of people thought he was the third best back among a group that included folks like Gerald Riggs and guys, there was another Cedric Houston. Mm-hmm. But he ended up having a great season. He rushed for over 220 yards against Florida at the end of the year. He had 41 carries in a win over Arkansas. He had a great single season. Travis Henry had some great seasons as well for Tennessee as a running back. I mean, if you start talking about players all the time, I mean, Peyton Manning has to be in that group. You're right, I did not cover Reggie White. Eric Berry was a phenomenal football player. Can't ignore him. Can't ignore Al Wilson and what he was able to do. Heath Shuler was a great football player. There have been some great individual players that Tennessee has had through the years. But if I were to go running backs, this will be the most productive running back season since Travis Stevens in 2001.
Pretty strong. Caleb?
Jimmy, I agree. And Travis Stevens, I think Dylan Samson actually is on pace to break Travis Stevens' rushing record in 2001.
He is.
Yeah. And before that, there was obviously the Jay Graham season, and wasn't it 95 where that was the record before Travis Stevens.
Yeah.
But going beyond the running backs real quick, I just want to throw out some, and again, not players, because, it's hard to say Dylan Sampson's Peyton Manning or Al Wilson, but I'm talking about, the single seasons, that Manning 97 season, let's take the Al Wilson 98 season, actually, where he was the only All-American on the team. Is there an argument that Dylan Sampson's having a better season individually than Al Wilson had on that 98 team?
You could make an argument from this perspective. Al Wilson missed 2.5 games that year.
He did.
He wasn't always there. I don't think he played in the Arkansas game, if I'm not mistaken. So if you talk about production and durability, I would take what Samson's doing over Al Wilson. Now, the leadership qualities were on another level when you talk about Al Wilson. But yeah, I just based on on his availability so far and what he's done, what he's meant to this team, I think you can make a strong argument for Samson over Al Wilson.
And Jimmy, I'm curious because you go back a couple of years more than me. How many times have you seen the running back be the leader of not just the offense, but maybe the entire team? It's not like quarterback where you have to accept the fact that you need to be a leader. You can just kind of do your thing. But it seems like Samson's a big-time leader, which would certainly be a positive in his category.
I don't remember a running back that was in this kind of a role. I don't.
Wow.
And there have been some great running backs. Like Jamal Lewis was a great running back. We haven't mentioned him yet. But he was not a leader of that team. Of course, he was playing some years with Peyton Manning and then T. Martin. So I don't remember a running back that fits into that category being the leader like Dylan Samson is. And frankly, when he got to Tennessee, I did not see him filling that role. This was a guy that was 180 pounds. And there were some people, I don't even know if LSU recruited him. But he was overlooked by a lot of people. Even though he set a rushing record. He broke Eddie Lacy's high school rushing record at his school. And Eddie Lacy went to Alabama and was a pretty darn good player. But, he's filled a role. I tell you what, he reminds me a lot of Jalen Wright in that both of them came to Tennessee undersized as running backs. Both of them were high school sprinters. Both of them put on a lot of weight. Jalen Wright didn't lose any speed. I don't know if Samson lost any speed, but he's still plenty fast and quick. And both of them became more powerful running backs. So I see a lot of comparisons between those two.
Yeah, so, Jimmy, and by the way, our poll question is, how historic is Dylan Samson's season? And the options are rivals, elite Vols running back seasons, like you brought up Travis Stevens. It's on the level of elite seasons in history, and that's we said Al Wilson in 98. I wanted to mention John Henderson in 2001, Eric Berry in 2008 and 2009. I'm sorry, John Henderson in 2000, not 2001, excuse me. But and then the third option is greatest single season in UT history, regardless of position. Which one of those do you land on, Jimmy, and why?
The one I would kick out right away is the last one, because the season's not over.
True, we're seeing to this point.
Yeah, so to this point, it would rank among them. I thought Manning was every bit as good as a sophomore as he was as a senior. If you look at his sophomore numbers, he actually had a better touchdown to interception ratio as a sophomore than he did as a senior. I think when he was a senior, he took more chances, and it led to more interceptions. But a guy, there have been so many outstanding single seasons. I would put him among the greatest single seasons among running backs in Tennessee history. And he's going to break a record that was set in, 1929?
Yeah. So you're not willing to go beyond running backs and have him rivaling the Reggie Whites, Peyton Mannings, John Hendersons, and Eric Berrys?
No, not yet. I mean, and by the way, I did see Reggie White play in 1983. I was covering LSU, and LSU played a game at Neyland Stadium, and they had an All-American tackle named Lance Smith who played more than a dozen years in the NFL. Reggie White whipped him like a yard dog. I had not seen a dominating performance by defensive linemen like that. He just took Lance Smith and threw him to the side and tackled whatever running back, Dalton Hilliard, Gary James, whatever. He just dominated that game for Tennessee. He was a fantastic college player.
Jimmy, a couple of comparisons I want to make to the Travis Stevens years. I remind everybody that the show is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks. Couple of comparisons and then one difference between Travis Stevens in 2001. And Jimmy, I'm just bounce this off of you and you tell me what you think. One, quickness was, I believe, their greatest gift, and balance, and they had a good run blocking offensive line in front of them. There were also some playmakers on the perimeter that probably opened things up at times. And they had to step into a role when their size was questioned. I know that Tennessee has Samson listed at 5'11", but he's not 5'10". So I think there's a comparison there. The one difference I would point out is not only Samson's leadership, which we talked about, but I do think even with his size, that he's a powerful runner. I think he does, despite his size, wear on defenses. Would you agree or disagree with that?
No, I think that's true. And he was not a power running back when he got to Tennessee. Not at all. Because he weighed 180 pounds. Neither was Jalen Wright, by the way. But yeah, I think he wears on them. And I can't really say that the offense wears on defenses because they're not running at this up-tempo warp speed, right? That was a reason that they were on defenses previously, but they're not going at this fast pace like they used to, unless they're playing Kent State or Chattanooga. So, yeah, from that perspective, I've been very impressed. I do think he can wear on them. He breaks a lot of tackles. I don't know this stat, y'all might. I'd be really curious to know what his yards after contact is, because I bet it's pretty darn good. And I'll say this too. Obviously, the offense Tennessee's running now versus when Travis Stevens played was very much different. Tennessee ran a lot of I-back in the I formation, and a lot of times had a fullback as a lead blocker. The 2001 offensive line is better than this offensive line. They were certainly better at tackle. This offensive line takes advantage of numbers, and they'll pop one right up the gut. If they got the number advantage on you, you break the line of scrimmage, you got a chance to gain a lot of yards, and Samson has been able to do that. But I do think Samson can wear on you as far as tackling him. He's elusive with power. That's a pretty good combination.
No, I agree. And I know you're a Cowboys fan. The one comparison I'll make is Emmitt Smith. And I'm not saying he's the next Emmitt Smith. They're going to be the all-time leading rusher. But I think they have the same quality. Like, people used to ask about Barry Sanders and the difference, and they compare the two. And Barry had the jump step, and you could talk about Eric Dickerson's top speed and all of that. But the one thing that I felt like really separated Emmitt Smith from the other tailbacks, and I think Dylan Samson has the same quality. I talked to Cooper about this yesterday. If people want to check that out, he maximizes every run. Like, if the blocking allows 5 yards, he gets 5 yards. There's very few times where I look at him and I think that he's left yardage on the field. I know that's tough to kind of put a number on. It's sort of innate, but what do you make of that assertion?
Let's see if I can. Is this Rommel? Vision. I think he has great vision. Rarely does he miss a hole. Rarely did Emmitt Smith miss a hole. And I think that's one of the great attributes about him. I can't remember sitting there looking at him and saying, boy, if he'd have cut left or right, there was nobody there, he'd have gained 5 or 7 or 10 more yards. I think he's got great vision, and he has that ability to make a jump cut. He has that ability within the tackle box or to bounce it outside, whatever he needs to do. Yeah, I agree with Cooper Mays on that. I think vision is the key to that. He doesn't leave a lot of yards on there. He always is, seems like he's always going forward when he gets hit. I think that's been one of the keys to him. And he's got a pretty darn good burst. I think Emmitt's speed was a little bit underrated, but I think Samson's faster. I think in the 40-yard dash, Samson would beat Emmitt Smith.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have the great runoff of 2024 between Emmitt and Dylan. That could be kind of ugly. What the age? Caleb is now comparing Kalen Deboer, who many thought was perhaps the second best coach in the nation, to $7 haircut Butch Jones.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Caleb, you set this up because I don't know what you're thinking. Comparing Kalen Deboer and all his greatness and what he did to Washington and what he's surely going to do at Alabama, right? But you are comparing him to Butch Jones. Why?
I'm raising warning flags about comparing him to Butch Jones. And I'm not saying this, Jimmy, because I actually think there's a bit of an overreaction to Alabama struggling this year. It's his first year with the new offense, and there's more parity. There's a lot of reasons that they have 2 losses. However, the red flag to me was apparently an Alabama player said over the weekend that they now have these things called they have these TNT signs across the practice field. And the TNT signs stand for takes no talent. And the point of the matter is it takes no talent to avoid making basic mistakes. So it's kind of a reminder of don't make basic mistakes. Jimmy, am I being unfair by saying that's a very Butch Jones thing to do? That's like the turnover trash can?
Yeah, I think it's I think it borders on being silly. Yeah. I don't think you saw that when Saban was running that program. Things like that. Yeah. I did not know that. I do know that he stepped into a very difficult job. I read where somebody wrote that this was all Saban's fault because all Deboer did was inherit the talent he left. To me, first of all, there is a lot of talent on that team. Second of all, weren't there like 40 players from Alabama that transferred?
Yes.
So to say that Saban wouldn't be any better than what Deboer is, I don't buy that at all. Now, Saban did have some undisciplined teams. If you remember 2 years ago when Tennessee beat them, they had 17 penalties in that game. They had 15 penalties this past Saturday. So they were not always the most disciplined team. And a lot of their penalties were off of aggression, personal fouls, late hits, stuff like that. But I think Deboer inherited one. It's very hard to replace a legend in any sport. And when I think about it, just off the top of my head, I can only remember one football coach that was a great coach that handed it off, and that coach did as good or better. And that was when Devaney at Nebraska handed it off to Osborne. And Osborne had a better run than Devaney had. So, but there are very few of them like that. So I think, one, it's tough. Secondly, the roster is would be much different if Saban had stayed there because he wouldn't have had 40 people to transfer. I doubt he'd have lost Caleb Downs to Ohio State and the wide receiver that went to Texas. So, but I think it's hard to do that your first year. And it's been a struggle. I think the transfer portal contributes to that because I think now it's harder to coach kids because if you jump on their butt about something, they might quit. Hey, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. We've already seen a lot of players who have already decided to accept their red shirt. They played 4 games, and they said, I'm out of here. I'm transferring. I'm going somewhere else. I think it makes it harder to be a disciplinarian, in particular in your first year. So I think Deboer ultimately would be successful at Alabama, but not to the – he's not going to match what Saban did. So from that perspective, a lot of people look at him and say he's a failure. I think he's a hell of a coach. Not just Sioux Falls, but then he went to, was it Fresno State? Yep. And then Washington. And Michael Penix was not that good at Indiana. Of course, he had a lot of injuries. And he becomes a great player at Washington. I think Deboer's a really good coach. He's in a tough situation.
I want to play this clip for you, Jimmy, that is a head scratcher. I think collectively we've been around football probably for over 100 years, but I've never seen anything quite like this. I'll remind you before we get to this clip, which will make you giggle, that Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by Varner Ford.
2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Ray Varner.
All right, go ahead and pull this up if you can for us, Caleb. This is the quarterback draw, dive, whatever you want to call it, quarterback sneak here.
That was the worst spot in history, by the way, too. But,
yes,
yeah.
for Alabama. And watch what the 2 players behind do. And this feels very Butch-like to me, which is why we wanted to play it for you. So here we go, Caleb.
Right here.
Okay. All right.
Is that –
yeah.
So the question,
they're going Steph Curry and Klay Thompson there, Jim. What's going on?
Yeah, Nate Oates put that play in. Yeah, I saw that.
Well, everybody survived on that 4th down, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good fake. I'm sure it just threw Tennessee off tremendously on that play. Yeah. That's just a couple of guys goofing around. I do wonder, did the coaching staff actually tell them to carry out a fake like that?
Well, one of the coaches was asked about it, which I would argue that Kalen Deboer, and I'm all for media access, shouldn't make anybody available from this point forward, except for him. He should be the one voice. But one coach was asked about it, and he was like, well, everything that happens on the field they were taught to do. Almost like he wanted to accept blame to take it off them, but I don't know why in the world they would do that. That just seems... I mean, why would you even teach that?
Yeah, because it has no impact. It has no effect. Yeah, I don't know. I've got to think those players acted on their own. You know, players, as you know, get together and do these celebrations that are planned, in particular in the NFL, but they also do it in college. So I'm just sure that's a couple of players that said, hey, if we got a 4th down quarterback sneak, we're going to fake like we're shooting a jump shot. I don't know. Or maybe they're big fans of LeBron James. Who knows?
So, Jimmy, but with all this, given the fact that Deboer was behind the whole TNT thing on the practice field, apparently, how unfair am I to invoke Butch Jones at this point? Is it as bad as the silly stuff Butch Jones was doing at Tennessee yet?
No, not yet. No. Now, what'll happen is, and it caught up to Butch Jones, when you do some of this silly stuff and you go 12-0, that's okay. When you do it and you've lost 2 games to 2 teams from the state of Tennessee, and if you lose another game or 2, then all of a sudden that gets magnified a lot.
Yeah. Agreed.
And so we'll see what happens down the stretch. Alabama, I think, is going to lose another game. I'm having a hard time seeing that team run the table.
Yep. Click like, the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed. Jimmy, nice enough to join us. Brought to you by Varner Ford each and every Wednesday. Jimmy, the poll question that I just put up on our YouTube page, we would encourage people to check out, and that is this. What is more likely for Kalen Deboer? Win a championship at Alabama or get fired in 4 years?
Probably fired in 4 years. And what'll happen is that, because it's harder now to win a championship when you add Texas, not so much Oklahoma, but when you add Texas to the equation. You got Georgia under Kirby Smart that's had the best football program in the last 5 years, right? 2 national championships, probably the best one-loss record over the last 5 years. So it's harder to win a championship. And if you don't win a championship in 4 years after replacing Saban, the fans are going to be all over him. He's going to probably say, I've had enough of this, like Bill Curry did, and bolt or get fired. So I would say in 4 years he will not be Alabama's coach.
Yeah, Jimmy, you bring up the harder to win a championship. This is why I would not have taken the Alabama job. And I know you talk about following legends. I've disagreed with that. But how much of this is Alabama fans not really being informed on the fact that it's just not really possible to replicate what Nick Saban did?
Oh, they don't care about that.
Yeah.
No, they don't. And most programs don't care about somebody followed a legend and didn't succeed and they got fired. You know, even if you go to basketball with Pat Summitt and Holly Worley got fired. And she won 3 SEC championships. And she made the Elite Eight 3 times, but that wasn't good enough because she wouldn't get to the Final Four. The standard that Saban left is championship level. And if you don't get there, maybe not national championship, but at least SEC championship, if you don't get there, the fans lose their patience quickly, and the administration may want to support them, but when the big boosters say, we're not giving you any more money, and oh, by the way, we got to pay players $23 million a year, or whatever that number is going to be, I think it's going to be really hard to keep. So I don't see a great future for him.
Jimmy, here's the other issue too, is there are a lot of leaders on that team that went to Alabama to be pushed by Nick Saban. And by everyone that I've spoken to, Kalen Deboer is more of a player's coach, which in this day and age, is I used to think of an insult. I don't anymore. I think Josh Heupel is a player's coach. I think you have to be that because of the reasons you mentioned that they'll transfer. But I would add this to the entire equation too that works against DeBoer replacing Saban, is that there wasn't as much of a need for NIL money as there is now because of the Saban discount. You go to him and you're going to make it to the NFL. So, Joanne, I think there are all kinds of issues across the board that just really make for a bad situation for Kalen Deboer. I could easily see him going somewhere else and having success. I just don't see it happening in Alabama.
Did you say across Deboer?
I did say across the board. I didn't mean to do that, but I was kind of proud of myself.
No, I think you said across the board. It just sounded too good to let go. Yeah, I could see that. I could see him leaving and going somewhere else and having success. It's a tough place to coach. It's a tough place because of the expectations. It was interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about, would you rather have the Ole Miss job or the Alabama job? At Ole Miss, you're not expected to win a championship, and you can go 7-5 and keep your job. At Alabama, you can't do that. But at Alabama, you got a greater chance to win a championship. There's inherently more pressure at Alabama to win at a high level. So you can be more secure at Ole Miss with the lower ceiling, or have a lot more scrutiny at Alabama with a higher ceiling. What do you want?
True. And I think we all would agree with this, that maybe this is a poll question, but from Lane Kiffin's perspective, the choices of co-eds are much better in Oxford. Now, Jimmy, that could be because of lack of dental care in the state of Alabama. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm not pretending to know. But if you're basing it off co-ed selection, you got to go Oxford.
well, if you're basing it on that, Kiffin may take the Florida job.
That is true.
True.
So, just
If and
curious.
when it becomes open.
So I wanted to ask you guys, like, what does that say? Because you guys are talking about, like, I'm bringing on the following alleged, and Jimmy, I get your point on Bob Devaney to Tom Osborne, the only one, but then what does that say about, like, Miami as a program in the 80s where they had Howard Schnellenberger and won it, and then they hired Jimmy Johnson and won one, and then they hired Dennis Erickson and won two. Was that them making good hires, or were they just lucky because it was such an elite program and anybody could have found the talent down there during that time?
Well, they they became an elite program. Was that the right succession? Wasn't Butch Davis in there somewhere?
Butch Davis was after Dennis Erickson and built a team that Larry
Or
Coker won a national title with. So,
Yeah, their program was elite. They had so many great players. There were people that wanted to go there. They had an attitude about that program that allowed them to sustain success like hardly anybody else has done. I mean, isn't it hard to name other places that did that?
Yeah, my thoughts on that are this: is not all the games were televised, and Schnellenberger and then Jimmy Johnson sold families on you can see your young man play. Whereas nowadays every game's televised, so that's not as much of a recruiting advantage. And I had one coach tell me that there are more elite athletes in that 3-county area around Dade than anywhere else in the nation, and I believe that to be true. I think second's probably Louisiana, and then maybe Texas, somewhere else. But as far as per capita, I think that it was lack of television exposure really that allowed Miami to keep all those guys in house.
I hadn't thought about that. I do remember when Mark Richt went to Miami, he said that there are so many great players that they got rated a 3-star. He said in most other places they'd be rated a 4-star, maybe even a 5-star, because you can't give a whole bunch of 4- and 5-star players to too many people in an area. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to put it. In other words, there's great talent in that area, Dave, as you're suggesting. I do remember when Nick Saban went to LSU that the state of Louisiana per capita produced more NFL players than any other state. Mm-hmm. That's not true anymore, but at that time, it was true. And, oh, by the way, they still produce a ton of players per capita that go to the NFL. And if you keep those players in Louisiana, LSU is hard to beat.
Well, I've maintained that LSU is the easiest job in America.
Easiest?
Yeah, the easiest. And by the way, Les Miles and Ed Orgeron winning championships there proves my point.
Well, that's why Brian Kelly went there. I think he said if those guys can win a championship, I ought to be able to win one.
Les Miles looks like he bumped his head on something, and then Ed Orgeron just looks like he just drank something. All right, Jimmy, your appearance brought to you by Varner Ford. You had a fantastic interview with Jeff Francis, and again, I love what you're doing every Sunday morning. I absolutely love that show, Sunday Sports Sound Off, and you get up early after writing a column. This is retirement for Jimmy. He is just an absolute dog when it comes to working, and we appreciate all you do.
Dave, I appreciate it. I've had Tim Irwin and I've been doing that show since the early 2000s. I think we started in 2002. He took about 5 years off because his son was at Duke. And then our most recent podcast with Jeff Francis, there are some really funny stories in that one. So hopefully folks will have a chance to go listen to it. You can find it on YouTube. If you have any trouble searching it under full disclosure, you can go to YouTube, search my name, and you can find all the interviews we have done with area. Most of them are former Tennessee stars in some fashion, but you can find most of those interviews there.
Jimmy, have a blessed day, sir. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Jimmy. Hobbs' appearance brought to you by Varner Ford. Phillip Fulmer will join us later in the program. Click like and subscribe. Be sure and stay tuned because we're going to talk to the ultimate Crimson Tide Slayer a little bit later. Can we get to this day in Tennessee sports history? Caleb, as this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. What is this day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb?
It's actually a game that involves Phillip Fulmer.
Hey now. All right.
It is the 25-year anniversary of Tennessee beating Alabama 21-7 in Tuscaloosa. It was actually Alabama's first game against Tennessee in Tuscaloosa instead of Birmingham since the 1930s. They were ranked number 10 because they had beaten Florida on the road that year. T. Martin and the Alabama quarterback, I believe it would have been Andrew Zal that year, both got hurt in the game, but they both came back. Alabama scored first, and then Tennessee scored 3 touchdowns and just manhandled them. That was the game where Fred White has told us in the past he may have gotten in touch with Sean Alexander's girlfriend. And
yes, Sean Alexander will not speak to him because this is before the internet too, guys, where Fred White would call other players at other teams and find out the names of their girlfriends and mothers. And he would use the name. Now, this is before the internet, Caleb. So I'm not even sure at your age if you can appreciate that. I mean, that.
Oh no, I can appreciate that. Trust me, I lived in the pre-internet age, believe it or not.
I mean, that took a lot of time. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Coming up on the program, James Pierce or Jermod McCoy. Who is the more valuable ball defender? Caleb and I do not agree, but he's been wrong before. He didn't think I could get 13 on Bench Off 2024, which I did. Phillip Fulmer to join us a little bit later in the program. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. BanksandJones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. Play to win. BanksandJones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
An update on our poll question brought to you by Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. Go to qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com, and tell Bo that Dave and Off the Hook Sports says hello. For some reason, Caleb is wrestling with his microphone. Are you okay over there, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Did a noise come when I was doing that?
There was a thumping. I don't know. I just thought you were mad at your microphone. I didn't know. I mean,
I hate my microphone.
Son of a. Coming up, it'll be Phillip Fulmer. Will join us. We'll talk about Tennessee beating Alabama. What can be done about the faking of injuries, which is just abhorrent and has gotten to be overboard. As a matter of fact, can we pull up that one Alabama clip, and I'll update everybody with our poll question, because a coach was asked to explain that bizarre substitution penalty in which an Alabama defensive back was sent out on the field to collapse. It was the collapse play. So, and we'll get to our poll question that is going to discuss who's more valuable, Jermod McCoy or James Pierce. So far, the answers are a bit surprising. But first, Kalen Deboer is most likely to get fired in 4 years, 92%, win a championship, 7%. Again, I think because of NIL and the transfer portal, that elite jobs are not elite jobs when a legend leaves. I think the same thing will be the case for Kirby Smart. Let's say Josh Heupel has championship success. I think it'll be the same thing. I just think that making that transition with the transfer portal as it is pretty much impossible. So, Caleb, do we have the clip of the Alabama coach who is explaining the injuries? Because to me, this is a huge, monstrous indictment that this coach shouldn't be speaking to the media any longer. Because he was completely taken unaware. And this is also proven. No, I think that's the jump shot one. Do you have the other one?
So that is the jump shot one. I apologize. Just give me 1 second.
No worries. All good. All right.
Let's unshare this for a minute.
Unshare that
amateur hour, guys. Amateur hour.
Doing a great job. As I remind you, portions of the program are brought to you by the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below for the UPS store Hardin Valley. All right, so
it's coming up now. Yeah, we got it this time.
All right, we got it this time. So this is very troublesome to me, and I know it's not the easiest thing to see, and if you're on our audio platforms, you can't see it at all. But basically, it's a split screen, and it's the illegal substitution that was called that technically probably shouldn't have been called because it was a player going down, which is still okay by the rules. But this is one of their coaches trying to explain this away. Here we go.
How would you describe what happened on that illegal substitution penalty where it looked like Moling was pushed King and then he went down?
Yeah, I mean, guys, obviously, we tell guys if you're injured or if you're hurt or if you're, pulling up with a cramp, you got to go down in that situation. We're not able to substitute someone when a team is going fast. And so if you're injured, the protocol there is for a guy to go down. And I think, we were able, our training room does a tremendous job, and we got a guy back after how.
Okay. So I've studied over my life pantomimes, which is a great way of determining if someone is lying or not. And one of the pantomimes that is common is when your voice starts to trail off. That's exactly what happened there. The guy was not hurt at all. Now, I've talked to Jacob Warren about this. There have been times where he has gone down during the game, and he's right. He's coached to do this, that he hates doing it because he thinks, my mom may be watching or my grandmother may be watching and think I'm really hurt. But you are taught, if it's just something small, to do this. But coaches are not taught to push players back on the field that could be injured, Caleb.
No, they're not taught to do that. at all. And so it's hilarious that he said that. We're now seeing why Kane Womack may have been fired from his last coaching job, because that's the one who spoke right there. He is, for those who don't know, the defensive coordinator at Alabama, and he was at South Alabama for 3 years. And to be fair, he actually, I thought, did a pretty good job there. But maybe he wasn't fired. Maybe he just left to become the defensive coordinator at Alabama. Maybe he thought that was a better job. But yeah, I'm with you. What he said made no sense. And the truth of the matter was, you were right. There's not a there wasn't a top-down one voice. This is what you say when you're asked about this. Whatever you think about Lane Kiffin, Dave, I guarantee it's so obvious Lane Kiffin's faking injuries now that I bet he tells his entire staff and all of his players, say this one thing when you're asked about it.
Yeah, or just say that's a head coach question. I mean, this to me is further proof that Kalen Deboer was not ready for the spotlight of the SEC. And I don't know that anybody is until they get in it. I think Josh Heupel's had his growing pains. I think Nick Saban had his growing pains. I know that at LSU, he called Jimmy Sexton and said, "What have you gotten me into?" And Jimmy Sexton reminded him that there are more athletes at the time that get to the NFL at the time than any state per capita. And that's when Nick Saban said, "Okay, I'll hang tight." But I don't think any coach is ready for the spotlight of the SEC. The question I have, and only about 10% of you think that Kalen Deboer can get it turned around, is he able to make it through to build his own team because of the transfers? That's easier said than done, Caleb.
Yeah, much easier said than done. And I think the one, again, this is where it's tricky with Kalen Deboer, is I don't think he's a bad coach. I actually do. I'm with Jimmy. I think he's a great coach. The problem is the expectation level at Alabama, but it's not just the expectation level. Okay, here's what happens. And Jimmy brought up Holly Warlick on the last segment. And what I'll say about Holly Warlick is this, that I think was unfair. Holly won 3 SEC titles her first 3 years there. But then the next 3 years she finished, there was a slow decline to where the last year her team was unranked, got bounced out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It was a really bad decline. What happened? When the coach is not living up to the expectations of that the previous head coach set, that doesn't mean they're not good, but the narrative creeps in that the program is slipping. And it's an unfair narrative a lot of times. But Dave, you know this, the minute that narrative creeps in, recruiting suffers and the mentality infects the players there. And once that narrative creeps in, you can't get it back. And so I think that's really what happens. That's what makes it, that's the hard part about following the legend, is that it's honestly narratives created by national media. I mean, how many times did you see this week? Nick Saban never lost 2 games before November after the 2007 season. And it's like, what the heck is Kalen Deboer supposed to do at this point? If he's going to hear that every single time something doesn't go, every single time he has a good season that's just not like a Nick Saban season.
I agree. New poll question brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. Go to peakivhydration.com and you can order the patches. You don't have to be in person to get the IV. Those patches are fantastic. Our new poll question is this, and this was brought up by Caleb, who I respect his football opinion, but I have a feeling we're going to differ quite a bit on this one. Who is the more valuable ball defender? Is it Jermod McCoy at cornerback or James Pierce at edge rusher? Caleb, what say you, sir? As right now the voting is about 70% to McCoy, which nobody would have predicted in the preseason.
Yes, 70% of our fans are smart.
That's crazy.
Come on.
Having covered Tennessee for a long time, and having been a Titans fan, by the way, I'm not all too familiar up close and personal with what a lockdown corner can do and the type of difference they can make on a team. So I'm really seeing it for the first time. I mean, the closest Tennessee the Vols ever had, Dave, was Dwayne Goodrich in '99, but they ran so many zone blitz schemes that you didn't really, no cornerback really locked down a side of the field under Chavis during that year. And then Jabari Greer, I guess, would have been 2003, was probably a really good one too, close to a lockdown corner. But this is the first time I've seen a true lockdown corner playing man coverage for 60 minutes. It changes everything about how you can scheme your defense. I've never seen this before. One of the biggest examples of this is Will Brooks. Look, I hate to use the cliche phrases, but he is a walk-on. I hate to do the gym rat, all that we talk about, but I don't know if Will Brooks could be playing on the field right now if there wasn't Jermod McCoy to take away half the field, and then they could scheme Will Brooks the way they want to.
Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Dominique Bailey is not a household name in Tennessee fans' houses, living rooms, if it's not for James Pierce. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Tyree West has half the production, if not for James Pierce. I think this is a case of recency bias, and I don't think you're factoring in the impact that Pierce has on an offense that has to constantly think about him, because we saw it against Florida. We saw the strip on the goal line. If that play doesn't happen, I'm not sure that Florida doesn't end up winning that game. It felt like they had all the momentum. So while I see what you're saying, and defensively it makes you better, just like Deion Sanders, who was the best lockdown corner of all time, and it's not even close. Sorry, Darrell Green. But Jermod McCoy, you can stay away from him. Now, that obviously gives your defense advantages in other areas, but with James Pierce, you can't really stay away from him. And when you try, it makes somebody else that much better. I don't know that Jermod McCoy's play makes anybody more productive on defense. I just think they're playing well as an entire unit, whereas I think Pierce's play makes other people like Tyree West and Dominique Bailey more impactful. We want your votes on the poll question, and then tell me why I'm right or wrong. Hit that like and subscribe button. Caleb, defend your Jermod McCoy as best you can.
Okay, so there's a few things here that we have to unpack. One, I actually agree with you about Dominic Bailey and Tyree West. I think James Pierce does impact, and I think you and I are both, what we're saying, we're not trying to disparage the other one, because they're both incredible. But I think, one, you bring up the James Pierce forced fumble. That was incredible. Jermod McCoy had the greatest fourth down pass breakup I've ever seen in Tennessee football history in that same game. I have never seen a cornerback be able to close on a receiver like he did on that fourth down pass, jump in front of the play to knock the ball down, and not even make contact with the receiver. Dave, do you know how, I mean, you covered football. Isn't that one of the hardest, most impossible things to do for a cornerback in that play?
Sure. And I thought that his interception showed something of his natural instincts, because the first thing I said when he picked it off is don't leave the end zone. I don't know about you, but I was like, down it. And he brought it out, and he ended up approximately the other 40. So that's his aggressive instincts, which I love. I do love that. But I think Pierce does a lot more for you from an entire defensive standpoint.
There's another layer here. If Pierce were to go down, look, Pierce does a lot. He does affect the defense. But if Pierce were to go down, Dave, you would still say the defensive line for Tennessee would be playing B-plus football, right?
Yes, but I think Ricky Gibson is really good at corners, so I don't think they would take a massive fall off if Jermod McCoy.
Oh, I think they would. I don't think Ricky Gibson is bad, but Dave, you've covered football a long time, and you know that number 2 corners can look pretty good until they're asked to cover the number 1 guy, and then they don't look so good anymore. And I think that would happen to Ricky Gibson.
There's some truth to that. Ken says the balls are so deep at defensive line they can still get pressure without Pierce. It would not be nearly as easy.
And also, by the way, look, I'm going to say it, and I know he ran into the punter. The only reason they're equally good, the only reason Pierce is starting over Jordan Ross is because of seniority. But Jordan Ross is as good, and I'm telling you guys that right now. So if Pierce went down, Jordan Ross could do the same thing. We've seen Joshua Josephs do similar things when they give Pierce a break every other drive. Tennessee has 3 to 4 elite edge rushers right now. Pierce is just the best of them. Jermod McCoy goes down. All of a sudden, Ricky Gibson is going to start getting cooked all the time because they're going to put him on the number 1 cornerback. Everybody's going to be questioning why Will Brooks is out there because he's just not fast enough to cover that much of the field. Okay, he's fast enough to cover a much shortened version of the field. I think you can. It's crazy. Again, I'm watching this for the first time in my life, guys. I never really was an Arizona Cardinals fan, so I never got to see Patrick Peterson. I watched him some at LSU, but I've never seen this before. They put Jamal McCoy on an island, and they literally roll everybody else to the other side. Everybody. And they're like, nope, you can handle this by yourself. And I didn't believe that whole lockdown island thing, Revis Island. And I'm watching it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, that really makes a difference. It's huge. More than even an edge rusher to me to a certain degree. And so I'm going Jermon McCoy's more important, also just because there's nobody to replace Jermon McCoy. Now, nobody's going to be as good as James Pierce, but are you telling me other players can't be as effective as James, similarly effective to James Pierce?
Not to that level. I mean, when he turns it on, when he's got the quarterback in his sights from the standpoint of Tennessee has the lead, and that's what don't forget, that's what this defense was designed to do, right? Is go after a quarterback because Tennessee had the lead.
That's exactly
if Tennessee's offense was a little bit better and Nico was a little bit more mature in his progression, then you would be talking about a defense that would lead the college football nation in sacks. I believe that. They have not had many opportunities to just come with their ears pinned back against quality opponents.
No, they haven't. And that's why they've had to roll James Pierce to the inside on stunts to stop the run all the time. By the way, that coach that said James Pierce is a liability against the run needs to be fired. I want to know his name because, guys, whoever, if he is your coach, you should be upset. He doesn't know football.
You're referring to that athletic story, and we talked about it in retrospect. I'm not sure it was worth talking about. And that's no offense to the writer, David Ubben, who did it. I thought he did a great job, but I just felt like there were a lot of lies in there. I felt there were a lot of things said to prop up people. General Ursus says Will Brooks deserves a scholarship. He has more than proved himself. Brooks made a shoestring tackle in Milrow, and he actually saved 2 touchdowns against Alabama, then had the interception. He absolutely sucked the life out of North Carolina State. But let's clarify this, and I'm glad this came up. You can still call him a walk-on, but it's not like back in the day because you have NIL money. His family's not stroking a check for his tuition.
No, they're not. And also, again, I'm with you guys. I love the way Will Brooks plays. I think but because Andre Turrentine is barely a par safety. I mean, he's borderline subpar, right?
Will Brooks?
No, Andre Turrentine.
Oh, Turrentine, yes. He's average.
Because Turrentine is just average, and because Boo Carter is still young and not always in position at the nickel spot, Will Brooks would not be able to have the freedom to do what he's able to do if Jermon McCoy weren't doing what he were on the outside, because the truth is Will Brooks he's not Deion Grant, okay, guys? He's not some elite free safety that can play center field and just cover a huge portion of the field. He can't do that. And if there wasn't a lockdown corner, he'd be asked to do that, and that would be a problem. He fits in this system. That's not to say that he's not valuable. I guess the best comparison from a reverse way, Dave, is you remember when Richard Sherman was getting all that hype as an elite lockdown corner, and then he went to San Francisco without Earl Thomas behind him, and we saw what he looks like without that?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think Jermon McCoy... Look, I agree with I'm not trying to disparage James Pierce. I think James Pierce is still the best. These are the 2 best draft prospects on Tennessee right now. Can we agree with that?
Okay, how about this? Bank on it. James Pierce will go higher in the NFL draft than Jermon McCoy. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
Who gets drafted higher in the NFL draft, McCoy or Pierce?
Pierce, because NFL GMs are stupid and they don't know how to evaluate cornerbacks.
Gosh, what a sidestep cop-out that was. Coming up, Phillip Fulmer will join us. Brought to you in part by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, Phillip Fulmer talks some Alabama and what can be done to fix these fake injuries. The former Tennessee head coach, national championship winner. Up next, Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren, asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, we're going to get Phillip Fulmer on here as the national championship winning head coach. There are a couple things we want to talk to him about. So working through some technical issues, as you can go ahead and give us the stat of the day, Caleb, if you don't mind. What is the stat of the day?
Now, a lot of this is because of number of games played and when the season used to start. However, with the win over Alabama over the weekend, Dave, Josh Heupel became the first coach in Tennessee history to win 6 games for 3 consecutive years before November.
Okay, tell me that one more time.
With the win over Alabama on Saturday, Josh Heupel, and again, this is because they play more games now. There is some skewing of that, obviously, but Josh Heupel's the first coach in Tennessee history to win 6 games before November for three straight years.
It's pretty impressive. Pardon me. Keep talking while I try to get Phillip on.
Yeah, it's Josh Heupel is. I mean, that's very impressive. Obviously, the landscape has changed a lot since that time, but we got to give him a lot of credit on that. I do believe that Josh Heupel's he's shattering a lot of stuff that a lot of molds at Tennessee. We got to give him credit, not the least of which having to change up his system this year from what he probably wants to do. Again, I told you guys yesterday, Josh Heupel already has more wins against Nick Saban than Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin combined. I'm sorry, against Alabama than Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin combined, excuse me. So that's intriguing on its own. I will say that as we mentioned earlier, as we're trying to bring Coach Fulmer on, this is we mentioned earlier in the show, it's the 25-year anniversary of Phillip Fulmer's 1999 Vols beating Alabama 21-7. And again, I encourage you guys to go listen to an old interview we have with Fred White talking about that game and how we got in touch with Sean Alexander's girlfriend.
Yep, there we go. Phillip Fulmer joins us now.
Good morning, guys. Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good.
Fantastic. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, we appreciate the time. I can't think of anybody more appropriate to get on after Tennessee beat Alabama, because you were pretty good against those guys.
Yeah, those were always great games. You're at Tennessee, you're measured by that game a lot, and then also obviously the same for Alabama. And historically, this game, that win means so much to the people of Tennessee and coaches and players and just everybody that's been a part of it. Having seen it from a lot of different looks, as a prospect way back when, and recruit at both schools, and then obviously to play against them, and then assistant coach and head coach and all that. It's just a wonderful game, and it means so much to the conference all the time and nationally. And what a great win it was for Coach Heupel and the Tennessee football team. Really won with a lot of great defense, and that's a good start to compete for championships. And not just in the defensive front, they've done great, but the linebackers and the secondary, they've just played super, and he's got a very physical football team, and it's continuing to get better. And it's been fun to watch.
I don't know if you saw this, but Nick Saban said that it was easier to get his team up for Tennessee than even against Auburn. He said that his players in that time viewed Tennessee as a bigger rival than Auburn. Does that surprise you at all?
No, not at all, David. And I've heard him say that before, actually.
Okay.
So, I think it's true. Obviously, the in-state rivalries are always big, and that's as big as any. But this goes back to Neyland and Bryant, and all the implications that the game meant. Nationally, conference-wise, it's just it's just phenomenal football rivalry to be a part of.
Coach, you talked a little bit about the physicality of Tennessee's team. And, we all came into this year expecting them to be your typical offensive, throw it all over the field that Josh Heupel's done, and they've really had to adjust. I'm sure there's times where you, as a head coach, had a team that you thought the personnel was one thing, and then the season kicked off, and it's not what you thought, and you have to adjust. How difficult is it to do that on the fly in the season?
Well, I would argue that he's doing what he has to do to be as good as he can be with the personnel that he has. He's got a young, very, very talented quarterback. And you go back to his first year and his second, he ran the football very well, and there happened to be a lot of more quarterback runs and things with Hooker and so he's always been he coaches physical. I watch practice. I go out occasionally and watch how they go about things. I mean, he wants to be a physical team and run the ball, and if you crowd him too much in there, he can really make you pay. And I think that's more of what you've seen is him being a coach that whatever he has to do to win the game. Second half of the Arkansas game probably emphasizes that as just as much. On Saturday, I mean, Samson is a tough back, a really, really good back, and the offensive line is maturing and playing better, this week than they might have a couple weeks ago, and that gave them a chance to make short yardage, be good in the red zone, not to have to kick so many field goals and those kind of things, because if you can run the football in tight and close and short yardage and goal line, those kind of things, it makes a huge difference. Vice versa, if your defense is not allowing the people to run the football or make first downs in short yardage, or making people kick at field goals, which has happened against Florida and Alabama. We made them kick some field goals. That ended up being the difference in the ball game. So I compliment him on what he's trying to do with what he has right now and how people are trying to play him.
Phillip, I made the argument earlier in the show and just kind of popped in my head, and I have a tendency to just throw stuff out there. So maybe this is crazy, and you can call me out. You
always have a habit of that. Yeah, we won't go back there.
That's right. Dylan Samson reminds me of Travis Stevens in some ways. Just never seems to miss a hole. He's quickness. He seems to always maximize the blocking that is there. Do you see any comparison there?
Yeah, I mean, I could say Travis Stevens. I could also say Travis Henry because he's such a tough runner, you know, and he probably, I don't know if he top end is as fast as them all, probably not. But that physicality that he runs with, but also to have the ability to run away from a linebacker or run away from, you know, the pursuit of the defense and get those extra yards. I mean, I just think he's a great back, and he's getting lots of recognition, but probably not enough, you know, because he is one heck of a football player.
Yeah, Coach, talking about the run game with Samson and the offensive line and the interior blocking, does as a former lineman yourself, who I know coached a lot of players with playing their hands in the dirt, and a lot of kids now play with their hands up, does it warm your heart to see Tennessee now getting under center on those 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 plays when for the longest time they got under shotgun?
Well, yes. And it's hard to start the ball 4 yards, 5 yards away, standing still, you know, and I think people realize that more and more. You can see it in pro football, you know, they got the tush push and all, you know, all the other things that are going on just to make first downs, because when you're receiving a snap that deep and starting from a standstill, it's not as conducive as being under and being able to quarterback sneak or start deeper, but taking the ball going forward. But the other people make it work, so I'm not a big fan of it.
No.
Not that I have anything to do with it, but yeah.
Agreed. Phillip, you had pretty good success in '98 with a team that was led by its defense. Yet, for those that don't know, you're an offensive coach, offensive lineman, offensive coordinator coming up through the ranks. Was it at all a strange adaptation to win that way? I mean, I know that's what you had to do, but was there a part of you always thinking, man, I'd like to score some more points?
No. I mean, again, I compliment Coach Heupel because we kind of went the same way. What did we have to do to win the game? You know, and I realized way early in my career, you know, because I was a defensive player when I came to Tennessee. I'm still mad about that. No, I'm kidding. But that's where I ended up having to play. But I loved playing defense. I loved having for an offensive player to have a defensive mentality. We had so many of those guys in my era that we moved from defensive line they would have probably been okay or pretty good players, but they could be great players with a defensive mentality on the offensive front. I mean, you look at Cozy Coleman, Fred Weary, Charles McCray. I mean, it goes on and on. They were the heart and soul of our football team, physically, you know, and it made practice tougher. It made just what we were talking about, short yardage goal line. Now, I wanted to use. This Pat Dye called me one time, and he had retired, and he had recruited me in high school, and we were both offensive linemen in college, and, you know, so we had this bond, you know, awkward bond maybe, but a bond. He calls me and he says, "Well, you're kicked out of the club." And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Out of the offensive line club. You know, you're throwing the football way too much." And I said, "Hey, Pat, I got Peyton Manning. I'm going to throw the football, So that was our best answer to be as good as we could be, and whatever it took is what we felt like we needed to do. Same with Casey Clausen. Early on, he's we're protecting him, not throwing the ball that much, but it helped our football team as he matured as a freshman for us to throw the thing around, and we got better and better and better, as a team, because we did what we had to do. And I think Coach Heupel does very similar to that. What do you have to do to win the game? And that's the bottom line. Whether you piss everybody off or not, you win the game.
You made you mentioned the Weary, Cozy Coleman. You made a couple of personnel moves after people showed up on campus. Jason Witten was another one that you moved from defensive end to tight end. And I still remember interviewing him after you moved him in that practice. And he was stunned and dismayed. Nowadays, with the transfer portal, a player could say, I'm not going to play that position. I'm Bolton. Can you even imagine coaching like that? Because you made the right decision for a lot of guys.
Yeah. That rule could make things challenging. Used to, you might have to wait till school started to make that kind of move. So somebody might leave, or they certainly might leave at the end of the year, but they wouldn't leave in the middle of the year. But now you almost have to wait till they get through their fourth game, I guess, so they can. I think the rule's probably still the same, because they can say, well, no, I want to be redshirt, and it's so tough. And usually you move guys to help the team, but also you want to make sure you're moving them. It's going to help them as well. And obviously Jason and I still laugh about it. He was mad at me for 2 months. I mean, he didn't speak to me, and that's okay, because it worked out great for him and great for us. And now he's very appreciative of that opportunity. And, Scott Wells, I just recruit Scott Wells as a defensive lineman, knowing, he's a great wrestler and he's probably not quite fast enough to be a defensive line in our scheme, but how great was it for him? I mean, he ended up playing
12 years.
12 years as an offensive center and a captain of the team, and he would have been probably been a good defensive lineman, but not a great, probably.
Yeah, I've got one other one, Caleb. Let me jump in real quick. You came out one time after practice and said Rashad Baker was perhaps I'm trying to remember the phraseology exactly. You said the most prepared freshman you had ever seen at receiver. And then the next day you moved him to defensive back. Did you know that you were going to do that at the time?
Yeah, well, we had been discussing that, as we do all of them. We had, I think it was 3 days of freshman practice, that nobody was there but the freshmen, at that particular time. And so you really got the chance to spend some time with them and see what you thought. And I was good at a lot of things, I think, but particularly good at finding the right spot for kids to go play. And Rashad, just those same instincts that made him a receiver, and we had some good receivers, made him a great defensive back for us. And he took to it pretty quick.
Yeah, he had a long career in the NFL too.
Yeah, so Coach, Dave and I had a little bit of a debate before you came on the show, and I know you've had a few players like this. So I wanted to know what your thoughts are. Tennessee has an elite edge rusher, defensive end right now in James Pierce. They have an elite lockdown corner in Jermon McCoy. What is more valuable to a defense, a cornerback that can take up the entire side, that can lock down one side of the field, or an edge rusher that dictates the entire way a team blocks?
One goes with the other, honestly, and I'm not trying to get around the question, but one of the reasons the lockdown cornerback is going to be good is somebody that's rushing the quarterback, well. So that goes together. But those things in that linebacker group, it ends up being an elite defense. And if we are anything particular, we are elite on defense, because we can play a lot of people, and everybody's been productive, and coach can count on his defense to be able to help him make his decisions offensively, scheme wise or ball control wise or whatever.
Well,
Yeah,
and go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a follow-up on that because you had Rodney Garner on your staff for a few years in the 90s, I remember, and he's the one who's obviously got this who put together a lot of this defensive line. How valuable of an assistant is he, and what do you remember about him when he coached under you?
Rodney was a young coach. Really, really doing good. Mostly we talked about he actually coached offense for me for a bit too there. So great recruiter, great staff guy, makes the kids understand, what their roles are, and he's honest with them and tough with them, and he can hug their neck or he can kick them in the butt, really, really well. And I think the parents appreciate that. He'll get their potential out of them, and he's a heck of an example for all the coaches. Really.
Phil, one last thing, I'll let you out of here. I think Josh Heupel has something similar to what you had in a defensive coordinator. You had it with John Chavis. I think he has it with Tim Banks, that he can trust and either focus on the offense, focus on recruiting, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying you didn't have input on defense. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Josh Heupel has input on defense, but how nice is it to have kind of that yin to the yang of having a defensive coordinator that you trust to get an elite defense on the field?
Well, yeah, you make a great point, and back in the day, we were very criticized because John was an assistant, was a defensive line coach, didn't have the reputation, but we were both younger and we ran together and exercised together and had hundreds of hours, thousands of hours probably of just talking football, and when he was a defensive line coach, and he always had input and thoughts on secondary play or linebacker play. He was not just a position coach. He saw the big picture, and he could manage kids and well, and we were really, really glad. I had a great staff. The core of the staff was really, really, really good, and we all stayed together a long time, and that makes a difference.
Philip, we really appreciate it. Have a blessed day, sir, and I love catching up with you. I still am leading the charge or carrying the banner that there needs to be a Phillip Fulmer statue. You won a championship. I've not given up on that, so we'll get that done eventually.
You're the man. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that. I'm dead serious about that. There needs to be a statue. There's a General Neyland statue. He won a championship. There should be a Phillip Fulmer statue. I've said that for a number of years, and I think that's just a given. You win a national championship, you should have a statue up at Neyland Stadium, and I think that Phillip Fulmer deserves that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's, and it's not just General Neyland. There's a lot of other players who have statues that deserve them, but you're right. If you're going to give it to the players, you absolutely need to give it to the head coach who won not only a national championship at Tennessee, but the only national championship of what we would call the modern era of college football. So it's, I'm with you on that. And that's to say nothing of the players who have the statues. I think T. Martin, Jackie Walker, who was a teammate of Fulmer's, funny enough, Condridge Holloway, and Lester McLean. I think Lester McLean was another teammate of Fulmer's. I think those are all important players. And guys, go back and look at the history of all of them. They basically were four of the most important of the. If you talk about the 10 most important players in breaking down racial barriers in SEC football history, those four are on the list. But absolutely, Phillip Fulmer deserves a statue if you're going to do that.
Agree. And if Josh Heupel wins a championship one day, I will say that he deserves a statue as well. And I forgot to ask Phillip Fulmer one thing. That's my bad. I'll tell you what that one thing is. Let me take a quick note, as you need to be sure and be aware of Double D piping when it comes to fire suppression.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best.
I completely forgot to ask Phillip about Bench Off 2024.
Well, honestly, that he could go straight into Peyton because apparently Peyton Manning was not the best bench presser. And
yes, neither was Casey Clausen. I still remember, I think I've told you this, at the pro day when he took his shirt off and a scout came up to me and said, how'd Casey do? And he goes, well, he should have never taken his shirt off.
Though, at that time...
And then he said, does he even know where the weight room is?
At that time, though, let's be fair, Casey was a California quarterback going into the NFL who didn't look to have the body type. But Tom Brady at that moment was a 2-time Super Bowl champion and was going on his 3rd. And he was also a California quarterback who didn't have the body type at the combine.
That's very true. And listen, I'll take it a step further. I don't know that it's necessarily needed. I think you need more power in your legs. Casey Clausen was not huge by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think you have to be. I want to get some takeaways from that conversation with Phillip Fulmer. Hang tight with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. I hope you appreciate that. If you want to throw in a super chat, feel free. That goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund, the 4-month-old that is planning on going to Harvard. So we better get rolling. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Coming up, we will have we've got Alabama faking injuries. Our last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And why the Vols may actually want to avoid finishing 2nd or better in the SEC and playing in that SEC championship game. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Now in its 45th year, the 2nd and 3rd generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, Caleb Calhoun puts very little emphasis on the SEC, and I don't know why. First, Caleb, can you reset our poll question? And I would like for that to be, does Phillip Fulmer deserve a statue in front of Neyland Stadium? Because I'm having trouble getting to that YouTube page. Hopefully our listeners are not. Please click the thumbs up. The like button helps us bring more people in. We greatly appreciate that. Hope you're subscribed to the channel. And this would sound like pure heresy a few years ago, and now it doesn't. And I'm afraid that the SEC championship game is going to have the same feel of the SEC basketball tournament. I hope that I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong. But here we go. Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier, and they'll help clean up your credit as well. Chatmortgage.com. Again, chatmortgage.com. So, Caleb, right now, the two teams that would be in the SEC championship game are LSU and Texas A&M. Now, it's probably not going to shake out that way, but A&M's schedule is pretty favorable, so we'll see. You think that Tennessee is better off avoiding the SEC championship game like the plague. Why?
Yes, because the College Football Playoff Selection Committee has not made it clear that they are not going to factor in that as another loss on your resume when you play in the conference title. I think with the way the SEC is going, the team that goes and plays in the title game, there will be one team. The team that loses the SEC title game will have 3 losses on their resume. They will. And they will have played an extra game trying to win that game. So your choice is try to win a game you may not win and risk injury, or lose that game and have 3 losses when you could have 3 losses either, or just don't go and have 2 losses. And I'm telling you, if you're Tennessee, you want to do everything you can to not go play in that title game.
Okay, here's the issue I have with what you're saying. Is you're assuming that Tennessee is going to be better having taken a week off. And generally in football, that is the case, right? It's better to get a rest. It's better to get a bye this week, especially when you're coming off a big victory. But there's also something to be said for playing in the zone. And I'll offer this as well, Caleb, that I don't know that Tennessee's going to win a national championship this year. I think the ultimate hurdle right now is still Georgia. Despite what happened with Alabama and despite what they're doing at Oregon, I respect what Dan Lanning's doing in Oregon, but ultimately he's probably going to have to face 2 very physical teams, one likely from the SEC, possibly 2. So if Tennessee can't beat Georgia and they can somehow go to the SEC championship game and win, then you win a championship, right?
Correct.
I mean, you win a championship. Now, if you go to the college football playoff, maybe that's a successful season, but you have no guarantee that you're winning any sort of hardware. Whereas if you go to the SEC championship game, the 2024 season, and you won an SEC title, despite what may happen in the college football playoff, and this may be antiquated in 3 or 4 years, I'll give you that. But as of right now, it would be viewed as a major, major step in the right direction and a major, major achievement by Josh Heupel. You can't argue that.
No, I can't. But, I mean, at the same time, if they win the SEC championship, they're going to the college football playoff. They're a lock to go into that.
Right, but they're not a lock to win it.
No, but what I'm saying is let me ask you this. Would you rather win the SEC? And actually, General Ursus just popped this question up. Would you rather see Tennessee go 11-1 and win the SEC title and lose in the first round, or go 10-2, no SEC title, and make it to the Final Four?
I would rather see them have a piece of hardware up there.
Yeah, no, wrong. Not in this era of college football. And the reason you're wrong is because...
Well, you're reading the hypothetical you're giving me. In the hypothetical, I would still have an opportunity to win a championship.
I know that, but I'm saying in the hypothetical... Win the SEC. Okay, how about this? Win the SEC, get bounced out in the first round of the playoff. Don't win the SEC, and you're guaranteed to make the Final Four, and then you can see what happens.
No, I'm not good. Listen, if you're asking me what's more important, an SEC championship or the Final Four of college football and the college football playoff, I'm taking an SEC championship. And I'll even say that, Caleb, if you want to say that you have a chance in the Final Four, that Tennessee could still win it. Not that it's an either or. You get bounced in the Final Four, or you win.
That's insane. That is insane. The SEC championship is not comparable to a national title anymore. Not comparable to competing for a national title anymore. It is an irrelevant trophy because of what the commissioner of the SEC decided to do, which is to the commissioner of the SEC decided to expand the playoff to a certain degree because he was one of the biggest proponents of this and create this 12-team playoff in this format that rendered that took away the incentive for the SEC title. I'm sorry, this random hardware doesn't matter. Let me ask you, Dave, have you ever cared about a college basketball team winning their conference tournament championship? Oh my gosh! They get to hang a banner because they won the conference tournament. They won 4 games in 4 days.
Now,
it's just so inspiring.
It's not completely analogous. That would be the same thing as an SEC team winning the regular season. It's more it's more comparable to that than just winning that one game, right?
Who cares if they win the regular season? There's 68 teams in the NCAA tournament. Just go. I mean, I'm sorry. This is the problem. Y'all wanted this expanded playoff, this grand experiment where all the qualified SEC teams get in. And then you want to come at me and be like, but the SEC championship game is still important. No, wrong. You guys rendered this irrelevant with your want of a bunch of at-large teams going to the college football playoff. I say, don't even try to go to the SEC title. And Rustastic says, Caleb, calm down. Your generation doesn't care about tradition. Rustastic, the SEC championship is only as old as 1992. It ain't like this is something that goes back to the 50s, okay? So,
well, but winning the SEC goes back to the 30s.
Yes, Tennessee has a national title without an SEC title. Do you think Tennessee prefers the 1950 season or the 1956 season? 1956, they won the SEC title. 1950, they finished second to Kentucky for the SEC title, but they claim a national title. What season's greater in Tennessee history, Dave?
Let me give that some thought. I'll tell you what.
No, that's crazy. There's no thought to that. The 1950 season is better. All right, y'all want to come at me about tradition when I've forgotten more about SEC football history than anybody y'all have ever met has known, okay? Or has learned, because I am a connoisseur of SEC football history. And I'm telling you right now, what about this? I'll give you another one real quick before we go further. Nick Saban has two national titles without an SEC title, 2011 and 2017. Does he prefer those seasons, or does he prefer the 2014 and 2016 seasons where he won the SEC title and not the national title?
I think they're comparable.
You're insane. No, they're not. No, they're not. Get out of here, Dave.
Work Truck's all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down. It has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering. While other dealerships just can't do it, contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod, work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road, no dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online. You can see it right there, worktrucksllc.com with an X, worktrucksllc.com. Find the perfect truck, outfit it, make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, llc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. That'll lead us to this topic, 4 downs, and it's brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, got a series of questions for you on the message board and also for Caleb Calhoun as we'll get rolling right now. Caleb's all about just chucking history into the Tennessee River, which is disappointing, but that's Caleb. He's forward thinking. He surprises us a lot. So
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. What down is it, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
You say that you would rather get bounced out of the Final Four than win an SEC championship. Is that correct?
I'd say I'd rather be guaranteed a spot in the Final Four than win an SEC championship and then see what happens.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. If I told you that they were mutually exclusive, you could only have one or the other, you in the season getting bounced out in the round of 4, or you win an SEC title, which would you prefer?
So it's guaranteed that I get bounced out in the 4.
Guaranteed. Something happens. Nico throws 5 interceptions, whatever. Yeah, you're out.
Yeah, I'd still rather go to the Final Four. The stage of the college football playoff and the Final Four would do so much more for recruiting.
Okay, well, I think I know where you're going to be on this then.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
National championship game. So you're
national
you're
championship game.
Okay.
I'm taking that. Yeah, put me in the national championship game. We're winning the SEC.
I'll be honest with you, and I don't like admitting I'm wrong, especially on some of your crazy takes. But you've almost got me on this one. Okay, you almost got me on the national championship game because that is an elite stage. I mean, the world stops to watch that game. So I don't know that I can really argue with you there. All right, how about this?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right.
Wait, this is only third down. We've only had 3.
Down. Right.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Winning an SEC championship means more than any other conference title and should be considered that way. Yes or no?
It did until this year, but no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't anymore. As a matter of fact, the ACC, Big 12, and Group of 5 conference championships are more valuable than the SEC championship because those 3 may not have at-large bids. So the SEC championship has now fallen to barely middle of the pack, almost one of the least important conference title games. Sorry.
Okay, I would argue this, and it actually supports your argument. The only other one is the Big 10. I mean, I've covered all of those conferences except for what the Pac-12 used to be. So there is an awful lot of pride there. You would hang a banner up over the Big 10 championship. If you want to hang a banner up for the ACC championship, you can, but who cares? All right.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right. Losing the SEC championship is a guarantee that you're not going to win a national championship. You're going to have a lower seed, and your confidence is going to get dinged.
It is actually a potential, either losing it or not going is a potential increase that you're not going to go to the national championship, and I will tell you why. Dave, let me ask you this. Just throw this question out, because we have the first round bias. Say you lose the SEC title and you're the 5 seed. You get to play the Group of 5 champion in the first round, which at home, which is going to be Boise State, Army, or Navy, or somebody like that. You get to play them at home. Then the next week, you get to play the lowest rated Power 4 conference champion, which is not going to even be a top 15 team. Would you rather do that? Or would you rather have to beat a Georgia in the SEC title, get the first round bye, and then have to beat maybe the 3rd best SEC team in your first game after the bye? I'll take the former. It's like, would you rather have to beat Georgia and LSU to get to the Final Four, or would you rather have to beat Boise State and Iowa State to get to the Final Four?
Okay. Let me ask you this. What do you think, now that we have 7 games under our belt, is the most likely scenario, brought to you by Medicare Misty?
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Here's my most likely scenario. I don't think Tennessee makes the SEC championship game, which is fine because the way you pointed it out. And I do agree with you, but I think winning the SEC championship is maybe more, in my opinion, a stronger thing than you. But still, if you miss the game, all is not lost, right? It's not like you're going to the Citrus Bowl. So I think the way this plays out, based off what I've seen, not only from Tennessee, but moving forward, is that Tennessee doesn't make the SEC championship game, host a first round game in Neyland Stadium, wins that game. So that would put them into what? The round of 8, right?
Yeah.
Because of the 12. I don't know why they just didn't go ahead and make it 16. But anyway.
By the way, also, I'd be willing to bet the home team gets to collect all that money from that playoff game. That's probably a huge boost within the age of NIL.
Yeah, no, probably. You're probably right. I would, and then I would argue they win one more game. So right now, I believe, based off what I have seen, that Tennessee will make the Final Four, will not play for the SEC championship. If you laid everything out in front of me and said, Dave, you had to put a mortgage payment on one of these, that's what I think it'll be, because I think Tennessee's going to be really tough to beat at home. I think they're a mature team that will play well on the road in a bowl game. That's not really on the road. They'll travel well. And then I think it'll come to, I don't think Tennessee is the very best team in the nation. They might grow into that, but I don't think they're the very best team in the nation right now.
Yes, I could see that. But now you are making the point that if they're going to become the best team in the nation, though, they need to. It's more important to go further in the playoff than it is to win the SEC. I'm going to go here. Bragging about winning the SEC championship going forward is going to be similar to the accomplishments Butch Jones bragged about at Tennessee when he said, we've won 3 straight bowl games, or last year when he was at Arkansas State and wore a bowl-bound t-shirt because they got to 6-6. That is what bragging about winning the SEC championship is going to be going forward. You're going to look like Butch Jones.
Well,
so if you guys want to look like Butch Jones, do it.
To your point, Butch Jones afterwards said to a reporter when he was on Alabama staff, a Tennessee reporter said, we had things going pretty good here. We were winning 9 games. Y'all aren't happy with that now. I mean, he thought that was good enough. It's not. I tell you what's good enough.
It's basically the new life championship.
Yeah. Are all the products that are at TriStar Hats. Use the promo code HOOKED, get 10% off.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without...
Okay. You are an athletic director. You have an unlimited budget. You're Southern California before they hired Lincoln Riley, right? You walked in, you said, I'm paying you $10 million a year. How many coaches, especially given, and this is some recency bias, but I mean, most ADs previous to this season would have taken Kalen Deboer over Josh Heupel. As a matter of fact, I was looking up preseason rankings of coaches, and Deboer was number 2. Well, he's not anymore, clearly. So how many coaches, lock, stock, and barrel, would you take over Josh Heupel, given what he has done over the past week, given what he's done to build Tennessee to this program that it is now? And last look, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We save the best for last. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses. Caleb, I think you have to say Kirby Smart, right? Danny White would never admit it, but if Kirby Smart was available, you would go get Kirby Smart.
Would you?
Okay, all right, fine. Now, the other coaches that have won championships, Dabo Swinney and Mac Brown.
Yeah.
Mac, that Vince is passed, okay? He doesn't have Vince Young, and I think he's 180 years old.
I think, yes.
I looked that up, and it was either 180 or 182. And then Dabo Swinney, who's having a fine season after getting beat by Georgia in the opener, has 2 championships. But I'm not taking Dabo Swinney because, yes, he's maybe having a little bit of a renaissance, but a renaissance in the ACC is like going to a strip club in Starkville.
Hey, those strippers work hard in Starkville.
They're all going to college to be nurses.
That is very, very true. So here's the funny thing about Dabo Swinney. I want to say this about coaching. A lot of coaching success has very little to do with what the coach does there and more to do with 3 things: the structure of the program, the resume of the coach himself, and the level of competition around him. It's kind of like one of those things, Dave, as a historian, I'm just going to throw this out there real quick. We study presidential elections, and one of the most overrated things is the idea that the type of candidate or the type of campaigning determines the election. No, just the state of the country at the time determines it, period, end of story. Governing matters, not campaigning. That's what historians always say, and that's tested back to 1860. Structure of the program matters, not necessarily the coaching. Dabo Swinney had a better narrative surrounding him in 2019. So if he got hired at Tennessee after 2019, I have no doubt that he would have done the exact same job himself that he would do now, but the narrative around Dabo Swinney would be stronger. Because here's a coach who won 2 national titles in 3 years out at Clemson and just beat Alabama twice and maybe the greatest coach of all time and could be, pushing that. That would help him recruit at a much higher level. Whereas if now he's hired at Tennessee, it looks like, or sorry, you said USC, not Tennessee, but USC. Now if he's hired at USC, it looks like here's a coach that's lost a step and the game's passed him by. That's the narrative surrounding him right now, isn't it?
Yeah, no, and the narrative, you mentioned USC. The narrative around Lincoln Riley is
that he's lost it.
Well, he's got his money and his offense has been figured out, and they were never good on defense. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. You say, I don't know about Kirby Smart. I'm going to tell you the 2 coaches that, one is Kirby Smart, that I would hire over Josh Heupel if I were the Dallas Cowboys. That's not a good example either, because you're talking about making the pro transition. If I could handpick any coach to be the head coach at Hooker U, and all contracts didn't matter and all of that stuff. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I'll tell you who the one guy is other than Kirby Smart.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
I would take Dan Lanning in Oregon. I would take him right now over Josh Heupel, but it's very, very close. What say you, Caleb? Because Peyton Manning wanted to weigh in, and he said,
that is total bullshit.
All right. Caleb, what say you?
Here's what scares me about Dan Lanning, interestingly enough. Dan Lanning went 10-3 his first year at Oregon. Congratulations. And then he went 12-2 last year. Of his 5 losses, one of them's against Georgia. No shame in that, right? That was his first game back at his former school. 3 of them are to Kalen Deboer at Washington. 3 of them. He lost 3 games just to Kalen Deboer, never beat him. And by the way, Kalen Deboer then comes around. What is Dan Lanning, Dave? But a protege of Kirby Smart. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Kalen Deboer, what did he just do to Kirby Smart this year? Kalen Deboer is 4-0 against the Kirby Smart Dan Lanning defense. That's kind of that's not a small sample size at that point. And so if you hire Dan Lanning and you have to play Kalen Deboer every year, you may not beat him. And so I get your point. I'm going to tell you who I'd go with. I'm going to make Dave's head really, really explode. He's going to be so angry at me for saying this, but I'm going to go with Kirk Cignetti, the Indiana head coach. And by the way, you can definitely roll up cigars when you beat Alabama at that point. Wait. His first job ever, I kid you not, was at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which, yes, is a school. And he went 53-17 there, won 2 conference titles, made the Division II playoff 3 times. Then he went to Elon, and he went to the Division I playoff twice, which they had never done before. Then he went to James Madison and won 3 straight CAA titles. James Madison makes the move from FCS to FBS, which is supposed to be an impossible move, and he goes 8-3 and 11-1 in back-to-back seasons there. Now he's at Indiana, and he's at 7-0 at Indiana. Kurt Cignetti is the hottest coach in football right now, by far.
Come on.
He's 7-0 in the Big Ten.
Come on. I mean, really? Come on. How many coaches have done this who surprise people at a smaller
Literally
program?
None.
Spicy take from Caleb, brought to you by Asia Cafe. I like it spicy. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family secrets. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. And they've got the Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee, the golden label coffee bag with the Lim family on there since 1909. Now, what about Miami's coach? Is he in the conversation?
No. And here's why. Mario Cristobal is, I see him as a Gene Chizik, and I've talked about this before. Sometimes a really bad coach can rent a really good quarterback for a year and look really, really, really good. Mike Norvell did that last year with Jordan Travis at Florida State. He started 0-3 every other year at Florida State, except last year when he got Jordan Travis. Mario Cristobal is doing the same thing with Cam Ward this year at Miami. I think that, and Gene Chizik, is the king of that. He rented Cam Newton for a year. Outside of the year he had Cam Newton, he was a trash head coach.
That's actually a very good way of putting it.
It is. I
can tell you the exact number of how much it costs if you want to know. Would you like to know?
183,000, right?
I was told it was more along the lines of $235 because the 183 was offered by Mississippi State. So I was told that it was a little bit higher.
Well, by the way, one coach I would, though, just because of my philosophy, I'm still high on it, Mike Elko. And he's close with, that's actually close, but I've told you, having Ivy League brains going up against college football coaches, that's an advantage that you've never heard of.
Now, we're having this conversation. Why? Because Jim Harbaugh is gone. Right? You would have to take Harbaugh over, although, man, he's tough to deal with, I've been told, behind the scenes. So I'm not
Nick
sure.
Nick Saban is gone, too.
And Saban is gone.
And Heupel was just named Bobby Dodd Coach of the Week.
Right. And he was just named Bobby Dodd Coach of the Week. You're right. Can we agree that we may have those like Kyle Whittingham at Utah? We may have, I have Lanning in Oregon. But I'm looking at some of the names on the preseason list, and Mike Norvell was on there. Lanning was as well. Steve Sarkisian, to me, is no more special than Josh Heupel is. And as a matter of fact, they both have a black mark on their resume because Heupel was fired and Steve Sarkisian was taking body shots. I don't know if they were body shots, but he's taking shots before special teams meetings on a Sunday morning. Now, what about a couple names like Lane Kiffin, Lance Leopold, Ryan Day? I guess what I want to boil this down to is ultimately we can make a strong argument, because I'm going to write a column about this, that with Saban and Harbaugh gone, that There is no question Josh Heupel is one of the blank best coaches in the nation. Is it 3, 5, 8, 10? Because he wasn't thought of by ESPN and the coaches that were polled before the season. I'm looking at a story that went back to April. So the college football reporters ranked the sport's top 10 coaches. And I'm going to give them to you now. Smart, Deboer, Whittingham, Sweeney, Norvell, Lanning, Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Leopold at Kansas, Ryan Day at Ohio State. Those that received votes, okay, that didn't make the top 10. Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, Kirk Ferentz, Luke Fickell, Drinkwitz, Mac Brown, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State, Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, Deion Sanders, Colorado, Kurt Cignetti at Indiana, Chris Kleeman at Kansas State, John Summerall, no relation to Pat. The bottom line is nobody thought much of anything about Josh Heupel, even headed into this season.
Yeah, I agree. It should be 5 to 7. I could drop a lot of those guys. I would
go 3 of 5. I really would, and I'm not being Homer, Dave. I think you know that.
I know. I think you have a point. I mean, look, I got him ahead of Brian Kelly now because Brian Kelly's made too many stupid decisions. But we also have to go back. Look, we trashed some of the stuff he was doing early in the year, but we can't ignore the results on the field. Deion Sanders has the best flair of any college football coach right now, and he, by the way, is leading my Coach of the Year candidacy. I mean, he's 5-2.
Okay, but would you take all the sideshow stuff? And would you
wait? Would I take the side? You're a Cowboy fan. You got 3 Super Bowls with the sideshow stuff.
Okay, but no, would you take the sideshow stuff and the uncertainty that he can't win without his son and Travis Hunter, who came with him?
I don't think the uncertainty is necessarily there as much anymore.
It's not there as much, but I would no. I don't think he's in the Josh Heupel league.
I think Deion, and this is the truth, and this is one of the few that I say this for. I think his name does recruit, and it's showing now. And I think Deion at Tennessee with that NIL money I think Deion Sanders would have Nick Saban level recruiting classes at Tennessee. I don't think he would have to coach that much because I think he would just stack up rosters. Guys, look, maybe it's unfair, maybe it's not, but the flair that he's brought to Colorado has him recruiting at a level that should be impossible at Colorado. Can you at least say that, Dave?
Can we just? That's another talk. I want to discuss Deion. If he had Tennessee NIL money, what would happen? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. A new ball report with Cooper Mays is up now. Check it out. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Don't forget, you can win that Dylan Samson autographed mini helmet by being a paid member of Hooker's Corner. Just click on that QR code, just $9.98 a month. You get increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. And all you have to do is be a paid member of Off the Hook Sports. Now, if you want to be a free member, you can do that too, and you'll get a taste of what we're all about on Hooker's Corner. Plus, you will be eligible for Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. We had 8,000 subscribers. Please hit the like and subscribe button. You can win a Garmin brought to you by Rick Terry worth over $1,000. That's right, worth over $1,000. It is an awesome watch. And Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. And we thank Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best in sports memorabilia daily updates. Don't answer the question because I want to discuss this tomorrow. How many athletic directors would hire Deion Sanders over Josh Heupel? All right, we'll discuss that tomorrow. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a